G'day again. We're going to start looking at surds, and I've divided it into 4 parts. So the first part is just plain multiplication of surds. So we'll look at 2. So root 3 multiplied by root 6. Whatever's inside there, that's what you focus on. So that's going to equal 3 multiplied by 6. Pretty straightforward. 3 times 6 is 18. Okay, let's do another one. So it's just basic mathematics. Root 5 times root 7 times root 5 is root 35. That's it. Okay, pretty straightforward. The thing when you get a root like that, not necessarily like that, is that sometimes you can simplify it. So for example, for this one, if you look at it, you're going to be able to actually simplify this, and we're going to do that right now. So let's just look at root 18. So this is the second part, is simplifying it. So if we look at root 18, what we're going to look for in there is a square. So I'm just going to list the squares over here. Now you should know your squares by now, because it's anything that's squared. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, and etc, etc. So we've got 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121, 144, blah, 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 and it keeps on going. Okay, you're most likely to only get something between 1 and 121. It's very unusual for them to give you a bigger question. But these are the numbers you're going to look for. So we want to know what's the biggest number here that goes into this, that you can multiply into this. And in this case, it's 9. So this equals 9 times 2. And why are we doing that? We're doing that because we know the square root of 9, because it's over here, it's a square. The square root of 9 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9. So if I square root that, I can actually pull it outside. So I usually do a little arrow with whatever the square root is, and say, well, that's going to come out the front. So then that's going to equal 3 multiplied by root 2, and that's the simplified version. If you answered that in a test, you get half marks, because you need to simplify your answer like that to the simplest root where you can't square root it or root it anymore. Okay? So if I give another example, so if we go root 98, and I'm picking examples that you should be able to look at and figure out before I do. So have a go. What's the biggest number over there? 3, 2, 1. Hopefully you figured out it was 49. Okay, so 49 times 2. What's the square root of 49? Well, you should know that. The square root of 49 is 7, so that's going to come out the front, and it will equal 7 root 2. Okay, back again. Just got a few more on part 2. So let's simplify these two. So we've got 12. Well, that's pretty easy. Square root, what's the biggest number here? You don't get too far and you realise it's 4. 4 multiplied by 3. Now we know the square root of 4 can come out, and that's a 2. So that's going to equal 2 root 3. And that should be pretty straightforward. 50. So what are we going to multiply? Well, it should be pretty obvious. You get down to 25 and you say 25 times 2. So we're going to go 25 multiplied by 2. We know the square root of 25. That's 2. That's not 2. That's 5. The square root of 25 is 5. Okay, so that will equal 5 root 2. Polite audience, no one's laughed, so that's very nice. Okay, so 5 root 2. The next stage you get, so that's the first stage, which is just simplifying the straight square root. The next stage you get is they put a number in front of it. And they say, what is 3 root 32? Simplify that. So just concentrate on the root, and so let's do that. So that will equal 3 multiplied by square root of 32. Well, we want a number that's going to go into it. In this case, it's 16. 16 times 2. The 16 is going to come out and be a 4. And what happens here is you don't add them, you multiply them. So this will equal 4 times 3 root 2, which equals 12 root 2. Okay? When you get questions like this, which are layered and you have pluses, you should do them down the page. Okay, so let's do that. 5 root 50, well we've already done root 50, but let's do it in steps like we were doing it down the page. So you go from here to here, so you go 5, 25 times 2, with our little arrow saying that's a 5, plus 2, 72, what's going to go into 72? And the audience has probably figured it out. It's 36. 36 times 2, square root of 36 is 6, so we're going to get 6 times 2. And then you'll just simply multiply. So you'll have 25, because 5 times 5 is 25, root 2, plus 2 times 6 is 12, root 2, and now you can add them together because they happen to be the same square root. 25 plus 12 is 37, so your answer will be 37 root 2, and you're done. G'day again, part 3. So this time we're going to look at rationalising the denominator, okay? So you can't, if you get an answer like this, let's say that was your answer in an exam, you're not allowed to leave a square root on the bottom. So you've got to learn to rationalise the denominator. So how you do that is you multiply that by 1. In other words, you don't change this. But the value we use for 1 is based on here. So we're not going to change anything because if you multiply something by 1, it's the same thing. But the value we're going to use is root 3. So we're going to actually do 1 over root 3 multiplied by root 3 over root 3. So we haven't changed anything. Okay, we're actually doing this, but we're using this. So root 3 times root 3, well if you multiply a root by the same thing, it's the number. It's just 3. 1 times root 3 is root 3. And that's it, you're done. You've rationalised the denominator, and that's a really good answer in an exam. This you'd lose half a mark for. Okay, so let's do another one. We got that? Yeah. Okay. And we'll do another one. Pick up and we'll just go 2 over root 7. So we're going to multiply by, again, ignore the top. You're only concentrating on rationalising the bottom. So we're going to multiply by root 7 on root 7. Well, a root times a root, I just told you, is the number. So that's a 7. 2 multiplied by root 7 is 2 root 7. And that's it, you're done. So let's do another one. So if we go, let's put a root on the top, shall we? Let's put root 2 over root 5. Well, ignore the top. I don't care what's on the top. We're rationalising the denominator, what's on the bottom. So I'm going to multiply by 1 using the bottom. Root times a root is the same thing, so that's a 5. And here I've got root times root. Well, we did that in the last part where you've got a root multiplied by root. 2 times 5, well that equals root 10. And that's it, you're done. G'day, back again, part 4, and this is the final part of Surds. It's rationalising the denominator where you've got 2 things on the bottom. And what you're going to use is the difference of 2 squares. So you're going to multiply, again we're going to multiply by 1, but base it on this. Now I've deliberately left the sign out because we want the difference of 2 squares. So instead of using a minus sign, I'm going to use a plus sign. And that's going to give us the difference of 2 squares on the bottom, which wipes out the middle term. Okay, so root 3 times root 3, well a root times a root is just the number, that's a 3. It's the difference of 2 squares, so we're going to have a minus sign, and 1 times 1 is just 1. Now we've got one lot of the top, it's just root 3 plus 1, and clean up the bottom, and that's it, you're done. So that's going to equal root 3 plus 1 over 2. Okay, you can check out another video for the difference of 2 squares. We'll do that another time. So let's do another one. So let's put a square root on the top. Root 7 plus 3. We're going to do the same sort of thing. We're going to ignore the top, use the bottom. So we're going to multiply by root 7, 3, root 7, 3. And here I had a minus and I used a plus because I want the difference of two squares. Here I've got a plus, so I'm going to use a minus. Okay, and again I'll have the difference of two squares in my answer. So root 7 times root 7, a root times a root is the number. Put a minus sign. 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, then we just multiply the top. Now I've got a root times a root, so I can include that. 2 times 7 is 14. I've got a minus sign up the top, so I'm going to leave the minus sign there. And I'm just going to have 3 multiplied by root 2, which is just 3 root 2. Clean up the bottom. 7 minus 9 is going to be minus 2. And that's a naughty. You can't have a negative on the bottom in an answer, or you shouldn't have. You probably might get away with it if you've got a nice examiner, but you shouldn't leave negatives on the bottom. That negative should come up here and make that negative and that positive. So you should switch this around and leave the 2. So that answer will become 3 root 2 minus root 14 over 2. Okay, and that's a much nicer way to put the answer. You may not lose marks for this, but I wouldn't take a risk. I would make your answer much nicer by not having negatives on the bottom. And that's it, you're done. Yep, go.
With the denominator for the first question, you've got minus 1 and plus 1, and then for the answer you wrote minus 1.
Okay, so this part is the difference of two squares. This is actually the difference of two squares, and this is the difference of two squares. These are the factors, and this is the answer. So I need to do a whole, what I might do is might do difference of two squares as part 5. How's that? Okay, so we might do the difference of two squares now.